And
This
let me set
conference
the
will now be recorded.
yes, and let me set the agenda for what we are doing today. So what I'm doing right now is that I'm just creating a virtual machine with Windows 10 Home operating system because I want to go ahead and give a demo on how do you install Docker on your on your local machine, because every time it's not suggestible to go ahead and just create a virtual machine and then kind of install all that stuff every time when you do it. It's not suggestible that way. We have something known as a Docker desktop application. Like we have a desktop application out here using which you can basically pull your images, create your own images, do whatever that you're doing on a virtual machine. And this is a Docker engine that is running on top of a Windows machine. So I am using a Windows 10 home operating system, which is single language. So if I do a winver, like this is my operating system that I'm using, a single language Windows 10 home. So it is able to run on sorry, it is able to run on top of this, and it is saying, okay, fine, you know what, these are all the images that you have till now. You have downloaded all these images and you've done a lot of things out here, and you say you also have a container and all that stuff. You can run this container and you can test it on your local, like you can also delete your containers and all that stuff using the GUI, graphical user interface, and you can do a lot more with this. But you need to firstly install this out. You need to make sure to install this out. So how do I do that? So I have a bare basic operating system with me, like just a very short, small operating system, and I'll just wait for the agent to start. So let's give it a minute. This will, right now this is taking some time in order to start the agent and give me the virtual machine in a running state. So I'm just waiting for this out. So if you look at this properties out here, it says agent status is not ready, so it's still provisioning the virtual machine in the backend. So let us give it a second. But let me tell you what I'll be doing out here. So let me open a notepad and let me basically set the agenda for what I'm going to do. Firstly, I am basically on a Windows 10 operating system. Imagining this particular VM that is there is my local machine. It's a it's a Windows 10. On top of it, what I'm doing is that firstly I am enabling few features. So enable features, and the features what I'm enabling is called a VM platform, and very importantly WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux. Meaning what I'm talking about is this. If I go into my control panel and if I say add or remove programs, let's say programs, and I'll say turn Windows feature on or off, I have multiple features out here, right? So the two very important features that I'm kind of looking at is something called as a virtual machine platform and something known as a Windows subsystem for Linux. These are the two things that I'm going to do, and I'll be following a guide called as, let's say, install Windows subsystem for Linux guide, and something that I'll see here. And I have the Microsoft documentation to do this. So I'll say manual steps for installation. So this is the Microsoft documentation what I'm going to follow. So I can share it across to you all in this particular Teams chat out here. So in this particular chat out here, sorry. And these are the steps that I'm going to perform. So it's telling enable Windows subsystem for Linux, check the requirement for installation, enable virtual machine feature, then download something known as a Linux kernel, and then basically go ahead and install a Linux distribution. This is something that I'm going to do right now. So my virtual machine should be ready by now. So let's wait for a second and let's kind of turn this virtual machine up. Yes, this is ready. This seems ready. Let's go ahead and kind of do a login into this machine. I'll say more choices. I'll say use a different account. I'll say test user hyphen Microsoft hyphen 001, and let me basically boot into this machine. So it'll just take a minute to go ahead into this machine and give me the UI out here. The first thing that I'll be doing is I'll just be following this documentation for everyone's benefit, and I'll enable these two features, something known as a Windows subsystem for Linux and a virtual machine feature out here, and then restart my machine. So it does take a couple of restarts and all that stuff. So let me do that out here. So accept, and here what I'll do is I'll say go to control panel, say open control panel. I'll say programs and features, install Windows feature and turn this on, and maybe later. And this is the feature that I want to enable. Virtual machine platform is one of the feature. Second thing is called Windows subsystem for Linux. These are two things that I want to enable, and I'll say OK. It says searching for the required features, and it'll go ahead and install these features for me right now. It says applying the features and all that stuff. And once this is done, it'll ask me to go ahead and restart my machine. I'll say yes, restart now. And it'll basically restart the entire virtual machine out here. So let's wait for a minute and let's boot back into my virtual machine. So this is the first step that I'm doing, is that I went ahead, I enabled the Windows subsystem for Linux, one feature. Second feature, I enabled something known as a virtual machine feature out here. Like these are two things that I've enabled. Then I'll go ahead and download this, the something known as a Linux kernel. So let me pick this up and let me kind of again go here. Let me say Microsoft -001. Let me kind of log into this machine. So this is done, and I'll basically go into the Microsoft Edge Explorer. So the first two steps are done. I'll go ahead and install the Linux kernel into it. As I confirm. Great. Let's put this into the documentation page, and I'll come down and I'll say okay fine, these are the first two steps that I'm done with. I'll just go ahead and now install this package, or install this something known as a Linux kernel out here. I'll say okay fine, installing Linux on top of Windows, says finish. This is done. Secondly, coming down and I'll open my PowerShell and I'll set WSL, meaning Windows Subsystem for Linux, as 2. So open PowerShell as an administrator, guys. So let's say PowerShell, and I'll open the Windows PowerShell out here, the default one. I'll paste this command out here. Now this is done. The operation is successfully completed. So it's setting WSL, meaning Windows Subsystem for Linux, and next is asking me to go ahead to the Microsoft Store and install the Linux distribution of your choice. So I'll basically open the store out here, and I'll say Ubuntu. So this is Ubuntu, like an older version of it. So I'll say Ubuntu 20 dot something LTS, because this is the latest version that I have. I'll say get. No thanks, and I'll say install. This is now installing this something known as Ubuntu out here. So now what it'll do is, like, firstly it'll download the entire Ubuntu distribution and then it'll install it on top of my virtual machine. Or I'm just calling this a virtual machine because it's a VM that is on Azure, but to basically drill it down, this is less the local machine that you'll be doing on, right? So let's say fine, it's calculating the download size. It'll take some time to go ahead and download this out. This is something that I'll be doing. After this, like it'll be installed in the backend, like it'll be running in the backend. So let's go ahead and install this out. After this is done, what I'll do is I'll say docker desktop download. I'll say download for Windows and Docker for Windows, and I'll say Docker for download. It says also available for something. I'll say download for Windows. This is what I want to do, and I'll just download this file out. So it's about 572 MB file. It's a big file. So it'll take about a minute to go ahead and download this out. And before you even download it and before you even start this installation procedure, I firstly want to go ahead and basically enable something known as a virtual machine platform. Secondly, Windows subsystem for Linux. These are the two features what I want you all to enable. And once that is done, please go ahead and install the Linux distribution from the Microsoft Store. Like this is almost done. This is done. This is installing it out. And once this is done, go ahead and download something known as a Docker desktop. It says great. This is, I'll just say launch. It says, installing, wait for a few minutes and etc. And firstly, it will ask me what is your username and password for the first boot. I'll give the username and password firstly, and then we can start using Docker on this. So all this is something that you'll be doing on your local machine. Okay, all this is something that you'll be doing on your what? On your local machine out here. So once this is done, I'll say open file. Yeah, it's still saying installing. This might take a few minutes, so let's give this some time to get installed. Yeah, that's fine. Let's wait for a second and let's try installing Docker. So it's a big thing, guys. Docker is a big engine out here. So now it's saying, okay, fine, I'm installing Docker on your system. And it's firstly analyzing what my Windows operating system is and all that stuff. So it's saying downloading package and all these things out. And let's see what this is. I'll say press any key to continue. And let's open this up again. It says, okay, fine, WSL distribution kind of failed. This is something Windows feature was not started. So since this is a virtual machine, right? It already is a virtual machine. It knows that it's already is a virtual machine. That's the reason it's not getting installed properly. But once you have done that, right? Once you've done this installation on your local machine, it will kind of load the Ubuntu operating system in such a way. You'll have the Ubuntu operating system kind of loading this way, and it will basically just ask you for a first login. It'll just tell you that what, give me a login ID. You can just go ahead and give any login ID. For me, I given it something known as a Linux user, and I've given a password for it. So any login ID is okay. And since this is a VM, right, that's the reason it's probably not loading this out, telling that okay, fine, this particular feature, the virtual machine feature could not be started because I'm already on a virtual machine, which I know that I'll kind of run this error on. But it's okay. I basically can kind of shut this down. And once this is done, what you'll need to do is that you'll need to integrate this with something known as a WSL, meaning you are running you are running Linux operating system in the backend and you're running Docker on top of it. Once the installation is done, right, you'll basically able to see Docker something like this. And if you go into the settings, you'll see something known as a WSL integration, and it will identify that you are running on a backend Ubuntu 20.0 server. You'll just need to enable this out. After installation is what I'm talking about. So right now it's like it'll take some time to go ahead and install, and after installing it will basically say, okay, fine, you have a Docker engine basically on top of it. Do you want to do a WSL integration? Meaning, do you want to integrate it with the Linux operating system that you have so that you can write your commands there? That is what I wanted to do. And after I do that, right, after I did this, even if I open my PowerShell out here, after I did a WSL integration, even if I open my PowerShell out here and say docker hyphen hyphen version, you'll be able to give the Docker version and all that stuff. And I'll be able to write all the Docker commands in my PowerShell console also. This is what Docker kind of enables me if I do it on a local machine. So let's give it a second and let's see. And this will take some time to basically get installed. But this is the installation procedure, what you need to do. And after installation, please come down to the settings, go to resources, go to WSL integration and enable this out. It'll be by default, it'll be disabled. Please enable it out so that you can use your Ubuntu to run your Docker commands. Guys, is this okay? Is the installation procedure, is the installation steps what we're taking, is this okay?
Yes,
Which
it's
means
clear.
we
Yes.
before we used the putty, right?
We used Putty in order to log into a virtual machine that is running on Linux. Like you had a virtual machine on top of which you were running the Linux operating system. What I am telling is that you don't even have to create a virtual machine to do this. Like it'll be on your local and you can basically use it from your local machine.
Okay, and when where we are giving the commands, then Docker desktop.
Here in this terminal. So whatever I give here, it'll be executed. Okay, so after this is there, right? In the first, I mean, what you'll have is like you'll have a Linux operating system out here. You'll have a Linux operating system running from your desktop. What I want you to do after that is install Docker on top of it. Install a Docker engine on top of it, and then install ACR and all that stuff. All those things out here. Like you don't even have to install Docker because your Docker is already running on your local machine, right? And you've integrated with this in the what do you say? You've done a WSL integration, and now if you just want to see if Docker is running or not, just do a Docker hyphen hyphen version. You should be able to see this. So does it answer your question, Akila? So you're not running your commands on top of a virtual machine. Rather, you're running your commands on your local machine itself. So what will this do is that this will bypass the procedure and says, yeah, it says, you know what, you should close and log out and all that stuff. So it will restart a couple of times and come back again. So what this will do is that this will basically help you bypass the process or the entire process of creation of a virtual machine and kind of use the entire Docker on your local machine only. Okay. Any questions with this procedure, guys? Anything with this? Anything, guys? Anyone? Anything? Are you all okay with this installation procedure on what we are doing and all that stuff?
Yes.
Okay, so let me close my virtual machine. So let me stop my virtual machine out here. And let me probably delete this out. And let me delete this out. And what I am trying to do out here today is that I already have a few custom images that I built from my local machine. So if I do a Docker image ls, I have a lot of images. And this image, you remember, guys, we have tagged this image yesterday and kind of did a push into the Azure Container Registry, right? The same thing, what I'm going to do today is that I am going to tag this image, which is Docker app. I have already built this image. I have my image built. And is everyone clear with the image building procedure, guys? Like how to write a Docker file and building the image. Is this okay? Is this understandable for everyone? Or do you all need another class on the same thing? Guys, anyone?
Yeah, I built already. If possible, take one more so that we'll be more familiar on this.
Okay, sure, great. I'll do that right away. Let's delete this particular resource group out here and let's come down here. So let me open up my Visual Studio Code out here. And I'll just write a very simple .NET application. So I'll just create a new project and I'll write a simple .NET application out here. And we'll also try Kubernetes today. So I'll say .NET Core, say next. I'll say Docker sample app 2, something like this. Just say create. And I'll just basically do a very simple edit out here. Like I'll just edit my code in a very simple way, telling that this is a Docker application or welcome to Docker or something like that. So I'll just go here. I'll say index.cshtml. I'll open this up and I'll say okay fine, welcome, and I'll say this application is running out of a container for container, welcome to Docker. Something like this, any demo like this. And the first thing that I'll do is I'll go into the folder. Okay, I'll basically say open this file path, copy the entire path, go to cmd. Easiest way to do it is like go to cmd, do a cd into that particular path, and I'm doing a .NET publish. It says all the projects are restored and all that stuff, and it'll give me also the path where it kind of published this out. So I'll just wait for that and kind of give this up. I mean, I'll just kind of wait for that and see what is there inside the path. And in between, let me pull up my Docker file. So let me go to dev.azure.com and let me take the same Docker file what we've been using so that everyone is on the same page. I don't want to write another one right now. So let me go to the file. Let me say Docker and let me say Docker, and I'll say is my Docker file. Yes, just my Docker file, very simple one. So I'll just take this Docker file and like I'll just open my VS Code out here, or even Notepad should be work fine for me. I'll say Notepad. I'll paste all these things out. The only thing that I need to change out here is the entry point for the application. This is very important to do because your application, right? If it is published properly, now this is the path where it kind of published out. It has a DLL called Docker sample app 2.dll. This is what I published it out with. So I'll say it is Docker sample app dot DLL is the entry point, meaning this is the actual executable file. And I'll say save. I'll say all files, and I'll basically save it inside the same published folder. The same published folder, I'll say it is in quotes dock a docker file file. No extensions, nothing. A very simple Docker file out here. Now what I'm going to do is let's go with PowerShell this time, and I'll say copy the entire path, put it out in this PowerShell out here, taking cd, and if I do a dir, it'll list all the files that are there in this particular folder. Now I'll say docker image build -t, which is target. The name of the image is docker app 2 or docker app sample 2 or something like this, and I'll say dot, meaning I am in the directory which has something called as a docker file, which will give you all the instructions on how to build your image. Please go ahead and build something for me. Now it says okay fine, I know that you are giving me a docker image. I'll basically go into this particular command set and I'll see what kind of an image you want and I'll build it out for you. So it's doing an image building process out here on my local machine. So it's going ahead and doing all that stuff. So let's give it a second so that it will build the image for me, create the image, and basically have the image on or publish the image on my local machine.
So that last word, the sample app to
Hmm.
Docker app sample to and
Hmm.
dot. What
Hmm.
that means?
So dot, this one is the name of the image that I'm giving, like build, and I'm saying target is the name of the image. And if I'm saying a dot, right, I'm saying in this directory, in the current directory, go ahead, and if I give a dot, it look for something called as a Docker file. So it's just looking for a Docker file in this particular directory where I've given a dot here. It's saying the current working directory is go ahead and build something, and it's like, kind of building the entire image out here, and it's extracting, it's doing a lot of stuff out here. And let's see, where am I right now? Yeah, it's extracting and it's doing a lot of building of the image out here. Let's see where I am right now here. It's doing the 5 of the 7 step, and it's actually not that clear out here if I kind of build out. Let's see if it's built out for me. I'll say
Uh,
Docker image
the
ls.
the
Yeah,
image
sorry.
name should be unique, right? I faced that issue later. I changed the image name. It worked.
Yes, image name should be unique. Like right now, it's yes, image name should be unique, because if you have already an image in your image repository called Docker app, you cannot give the same image name again. So it
And
should be
one more
unique,
issue I
or
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
or
please go
the
ahead.
tag should be unique.
Okay,
So the
okay.
image tag
One
should
more
be
issue.
unique. If you
Okay. One more issue I faced is port 80 is already used by another image. So
exactly.
in one, it should be only one port 80 we can use, right?
So that
In
is
one.
the publishing port, right? So in my
Yeah.
local machine, let's say if I have, for example, a Docker app, okay, or let's say I have an Nginx engine. Let's talk about an Nginx here. So what I'll do here is I'll say Docker run, and then basically the name of the container is something like Nginx container. I'll say publish 80. Okay, I want Nginx to run on 80, and internally Nginx will listen on what port 80 in a detached mode, and the name of the image here is Nginx, and the tag is latest. Okay, so this will fail because I did not give a T out here. It says that particular repository does not exist. So let me give a T. It says fine, unable to find this locally. Okay, it is local, but let's see. Okay, okay. So Docker login is denied. I'll do one thing. Instead of passing a Docker run command from here, let me pass the command from here using sudo. So sudo docker run hyphen name is nginx test hyphen port is 8080. So I tend to do this. I do a lot of combination of, let's say, my Linux engine and also my PowerShell scripts. Like both of them basically I'll be using when I'm especially working with Docker. Say nginx and say I say latest. Let's say it's password. I'll give a password for this. Now it said okay fine. I found an image, and right now I have like run a container for you. So it'll take a minute and it'll say, okay, fine. I'm now basically running a container for you on what? On port 80, meaning right now in my local machine, I have exposed a port 80, and I'm running a container called Nginx test on that port, or Nginx sample or something like that on that port, right? Meaning if I now basically go here and I'll say sudo docker container ls. It says you have one container that is running on a port 80, meaning port 80 on your local machine is exhausted, Sanjay. Port 80 on your local machine is now exhausted. So
Mhm.
if I do a local host now, it says nginx because it's running on what port 80. Now I have another image called docker image ls. Docker sample application 2, I want to create a container out of it. Okay, so I'll say firstly do a clear, it's docker app sample 2. Okay, I'll say docker, I'll say sudo docker run hyphen hyphen name. I'll say this is .NET application. I'll say the port to be published is what. Now I'll again give a port 8080. Okay, I'll say again port 80 detached mode. Now the name of the application was what, the name of the image. Let's see, I just keep forgetting this all the way again. Let's see, come back. Not upgrade, sorry. Let's come back to this particular setting. Where is that? Not this one, not this one. Let's open my Docker engine again. Let me toss this out. Let me see images. This is the image basically that I want. I just Docker sample application 2, which is the latest version of it. I said detached mode, Docker sample application, latest. Now it says, you know what, error response from the daemon, because the port is already allocated. I failed to bind the port, meaning the application or the container with some ID like this. Let's say sudo docker container ls with this particular ID is already running on that port. So I cannot again allocate you the same port out here. Please choose another port. So what I'm going to do is that to avoid port exhaustion, I'll put 8080 out here. The container port inside the container, this is a unique container again. The container that I'm creating is a unique container again. That can again run on a port 80, but not your local machine, because your machine has only one port 80, one port 8080, right? That's the very reason. Oh, error response, okay, conflict. Okay, it's already in use because that container basically it started the container, but it failed basically to kind of remove the container and all that stuff. So let me come down here. Let me see containers and applications. This is the container which got created. So I'll say remove, but it failed to start it. Now you will have this container that is running on port 8080 out here on your local host. Meaning if I now do a local host out here and port 8080 out here, you'll have your Docker application that is running. Meaning you can have multiple containers, but you need to be careful about the port that you are exposing. This is something that I am really concerned about, is that which port are you exposing out of your machine out here? Like what port is there on your machine, what have you already allocated, and what you can allocate. This is the thing that I'm like kind of looking at. Now does this answer your question, Sanjay, on why you cannot allocate the port?
Yes, yes, I got it. So same port we can't do it. So as you told, we need to use different ports,
Different
and
ports,
basically we
exactly.
need to identify which are port available, and then according
Exactly.
to that we need to.
So you'll have to identify yes on whichever port that is available and then expose it out.
Okay. For example, in real time, if we want to deploy multiple web apps, so in that
Mm-hmm.
they can't give when they will just give the address, right? So and so address, Microsoft.com or Azure.com. So
Mm-hmm.
they need to use port 80. That looks not good, right?
Yes, that's the reason you'll do a custom domain binding directly to HTTPS colon colon
Yeah.
XYZ
Port.
port and expose the port as such, and then do a custom domain to it.
Okay, okay, okay.
Like your custom
And
domain will be pointing out to CNAME record with a port being with the port being exposed out there.
okay. And can you please go to that command you run 8080 colon 80?
Mm-hmm. This one.
Here, hyphen P, yes, correct. Hyphen P, what the first one and after second colon, what is that? Can you please help me on that?
So first one is your local machine port,
Okay,
local, okay, or the virtual machine where you're running this out. Second one is the container port,
okay,
meaning I'm just telling please from my local machine whenever traffic comes in, because your local machine is the one that is listening, right? Or your virtual machine is the one that is listening to the incoming request. Please take the incoming request as port 8080 and then transfer it to the container. Inside the container, please go basically and transfer the traffic to a port called 80. This is what the publish really means out here.
Okay, got it.
Okay, if you don't publish this out, your containers are now not internet, it will be intranet, only your virtual network. Like your containers will again have a public and a private IP as well. Okay, so this is just how basically we publish a virtual machine in internet and intranet, right? This is how it's going to be.
Okay, yeah, I got it. Thank you. And
Any more
one more
questions?
thing, how can we identify which and all the port available in that particular local machine? You're telling about that I stopped.
Nothing, like you'll have to basically see what are the containers that are running. Like for example, if I want to see let's say I have a virtual machine and I want to do a sudo docker container ls. It says ports 8080 and 80 is already occupied, right? Here in the running of the container status, it says these are the ports that are already allocated.
Okay.
Apart from these two, please go ahead use anything else like 4172, 8182, whatever it is. You can open it out.
Okay. Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions, guys, before we proceed further?
In Docker run command, we are using the image name colon latest.
Hmm.
So why we need to use latest? We can mention the image name, right?
You can mention the image name, but the only reason I am mentioning latest is for a best practice. Meaning, if let's say you are doing a locker image ls, okay? Now you have created an image out of this code. Like you use this code and you created the image, which is great. Now let's say the developer changes something. This is not a version 1, this is version 2. Then you need another image for that version 2, right? So what I'll do now is that I'll say the image name is not docker sample 2. Its image name is docker sample 2 colon v2 version 2. When I run the container, I can select which version of my code has to be converted into a container, or which version of my image has to be converted into a container as such. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes. Just for
It's
our
versioning of your
identification,
image.
yes, yes.
Exactly. It's the versioning of the images and all that stuff. And since I have a Docker desktop out here, I can go ahead and stop my containers right away. Like these are the containers that are running. I can just stop. Says okay, fine, it's already stopped. I know that, and I'll stop this out. So both the containers stopped. I can delete this containers also.
Whenever we upload the new image, it will directly change to tag to the latest only, right? Or we
Yes,
need to
it'll
give it.
directly change. It'll directly change the tag to latest. But if you want to tag it, then you can go ahead and tag this out. For example, in my Docker file, right? See, there is a colon 3.1. That's the reason it went ahead and downloaded a colon, and here the tag is what 3.1.
Okay.
So 3.1 version of it. 3.1 version of that particular image. If I would have given a 5.0, it would have gone ahead and basically downloaded the 5.0 version of, let's say, that particular thing.
Okay. And last time I saw that we stopped the container and then we removed the container using the
Hmm.
command. But
Hmm.
still, this image will be there until we delete this image from that path, right?
Yes, the image will still be there.
Okay.
And how do you delete the images? Like if you have a Docker desktop with you, great, you can just go ahead and do it. But if you are using a command line, it will be docker sudo docker image rm remove, and I want to remove this particular image out here because I don't want this. Image id is a19b, right? So I'll say a19b. So there are a lot of images with a19b. Let's see, don't do this. Let's take this image out. Control C. So untagged, and then it kind of removed this out. So if I do a clear screen, and if I do a sudo docker image ls, you won't have that image. So that's how you can remove the image out.
Okay. So in real time, what we'll get? Just we need to update the upload the images, whatever the coder gives, and then we need to maintain that.
In the real-time environment, right, you won't even touch the docker. You won't even run docker on top of a virtual machine, meaning you won't even do all these things manually. What we are doing right now is a manual procedure, right? You will be using Azure DevOps rather to build your images, push your images into the container registry, meaning I am basically, I want a system where the developer is writing a code, push it into the Azure repository. As and when it does this, what I need now the code to be built, converted into an image, pushed into the ACR. Meaning I want the code to be built. I want to convert the builded code into an image. After I do that, I want to push this image into the Azure Container Registry. As and when this is done, I want the image to be going into something like a Kubernetes cluster. So everything is CI/CD for me right now. I won't attempt to do all these things manually. Everything is CI/CD, and our responsibility, maintain these build pipelines, maintain the images inside the ACR, and maintain the Kubernetes cluster. Developers work, he would write the code, give you the Docker file, and even the build and all these things, right? Now I won't even use a .NET build, a .NET restore, and all that stuff. If you were to look at the build pipeline that I'll be using, it'll be a very, very, very simple build pipeline. Like this is how Docker has made things very easy. Let me see if I have one with me. I have this one out. This is the only pipeline that I'm like really focused on right now. That's it. Build an image, publish an image into the container registry. That's it. This is the only thing I'm actually looking at. Nothing else. After this, I'll create a release pipeline which will use the image, pull that image from the Azure Container Registry, deploy it on top of a Kubernetes cluster. This is the only thing I want. And even if you look at my repository, right? My repository is now going to basically have the Docker application, and main importantly, it's going to have something like a Docker file out here. And this Docker file will look a bit different. I'll even explain why this is looking at different and all that stuff. I'll also explain why we are doing this and all these things out. So this is what I want to achieve out at the end. So I don't want to run anything manually. Rather, I now want to leverage Azure DevOps to do all these things out. Is it possible? Definitely yes. Is it easy? Definitely yes. Than what you do manually. Like you don't even have to do all these things out. So does that answer your question, Sanjay?
Yes, I got it. Basically, we are understanding how it will work, and then we'll come back to Azure DevOps
Exactly.
to do that. Okay.
Do that
Yeah.
out here.
Thank you.
Any more questions, guys? Okay, so I have an image right now. I want to now push the image into the Azure Container Registry. So what I'm going to do is that I'll say sudo az login, and it'll basically try to basically log me in into, let's say, the my Azure account out here, and it says okay fine, use the device code and all that stuff. Okay, why is it localhost? No, not localhost. Let's see authorize. Great. Let's try this out. Okay, not working. Let's see. Let's say sudo az login --use -device -code. Yeah, this will most probably work. Let me say microsoft.com -device login. Let me use an incognito window because my history is coming in between. Login -microsoft.com, or let's say device login, and says user code. I'll basically take this code out, which is SNT9M. Let's see, all caps SNT9M. And where did I lose it? Yes, SNT9M GSTY. Okay.
One more thing, this device login,
Mhm.
this is specific to Linux platform or for some other
No,
thing
you
we
can
can use?
also do in PowerShell also.
Okay.
You can also do in PowerShell also, not a problem at all.
Okay.
So let me authorize myself. I should have been logged in here, and this would basically give me where I've logged in, all that stuff. It says okay, fine. This is a multi-factor authentication and all that stuff. So that's the reason it's telling me no directory was found and all that stuff. That's pretty fine. Let me use PowerShell here. This is more easier way in order to do this out. Let me see what's the error that's giving here. It says easy login and then give your tenant ID out here. Let's say easy login hyphen what's it command hyphen tenant, and then the tenant ID tenant, and let me give my tenant ID out here from here. Let me go to the Active Directory and get my tenant ID. Let me show. That's fine. This is great. Let me now see if I have a container registry, which I don't right now. So what I'll be doing out here is I'll just go ahead and create a container registry. I'll say ACR sample. Say create, and let me go ahead and create a container registry for my own self. So let's say create, and let's say container, and give me a list of things basically that I can do. But what I want really is the Azure container registry. So I'll say publisher type is not all, but Microsoft container registry is something that I need to create right now. I'll say container registry, and I'll go ahead and just create a very simple container registry. Let's say just container registry to AB000, something like this, so that it can be unique. Like put the location and anything. I'll just prefer at least US2. Say standard, premium, basic. I'll just go for basic. Networking, encryption, review and create. So after I create the ACR, I will tag my image. Like this is the image that I do have right now. Or I'll say Docker image ls. I'll tag my image right now, and then I'll do a push into the Azure Container Registry out here. So let's try that. And this is done. I'll say access key. Say enable, so that I can basically push my registry into it. So now I'll say Docker image tag, and I'll use this particular image called something like this. Latest, and then the tag would be something like the name of the server forward slash the name of the image. Let est latest. Let's see if it tagged. Yes, it tagged this particular image. Now I'll just take this image and just push it into the Azure Container Registry, for which I'll do az acr login and then give the name of the registry out here. I'll fail, did not take the name. Az acr login, and this will be the name of the registry. Yes, this is the name of the registry. Okay, az acr login, something like this. Expose token. No, not really. Az acr login. Why isn't it not? Okay, got it. -n. It should be able to log me in out here. Yeah, login succeeded. And now I'll say Docker image ls to see what are the images that I have, and I'll say Docker image push and take the entire ID of this one, like take the entire fully qualified domain name. Say tag is latest. So the push refers to this particular image, and basically it will take the image from my local machine and push it onto, let's say, the Azure Container Registry out there. Now once this is pushed, I will have an image out here, and once you have an image inside the repository, I want you all to take it from here, create a cluster, use the manifest file of the cluster, meaning use these files out here. Let me come back to our repository. Use these files out here, and when you create a cluster, please use this particular file inside ACR. Please go ahead, mention this in your app deployment, and mention the name of your registry and the image along with the tag. This will be your app deployment. This is where you're going to add. You're going to go into the Kubernetes cluster and say workloads and add this workload as a YAML file, and then you have the services and ingress. Go ahead and add this service out here. You should get an external endpoint, meaning you should get an external public IP using which you can browse your changes. Guys, is this something that I can ask, or do you all want a demo for this one out? Guys, anyone? I want you all to try this out by your own. Like, are you all able to follow this, guys? Any issues with this? Any issues with what we are doing out here? Anything?
Yesterday class was easy compared to Dockers.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do that. Kubernetes.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. You can do that, but please also do this also.
Sure.
So we should select the container registry, right, in the Kubernetes.
Correct. We should select the container registry with the Kubernetes. While you're creating the Kubernetes, right? Please select the container registry that is already there. Guys, is this okay?
Yes.
Any more questions here, guys? Please try this out. And what we are going to try doing next is using Azure DevOps. How do you achieve all these things out? Meaning this is right now semi-automatic, meaning semi-automated. I want us to fully automate this process. And this is how basically, or this is what I kind of want us to do out here. And then we can go ahead and kind of achieve the task. And with that, our sessions will be done, guys. Like if we are done with Azure DevOps and Docker and Kubernetes, our sessions are going to be done. But what I want to do is that I want to extend it slightly, meaning I can take mock interviews on a weekend. Like I can tell you all what topics we need to prepare, because if I do a full interview right now, it'll be like a bit on to the entire place. What I would do is suggest what topics you'll need to kind of read, and then we can do mock interviews out. Okay, is that
Sure.
something which is okay with you all, guys?
Yes.
Yes, sounds good.
Yeah, this is something that I kind of since on a weekday, right, like I have a lot of things, the office and all that stuff, so on a weekday I won't be able to do it, but I will drive it on a weekend. Like on a weekend, let's like put somewhere around 2 hours of session, let's block 2 hours of time, and then let's drive this over a weekend. Like since we are connecting on 9 to 10, I'm okay in a weekend to basically connect with you all at 9 to 11 and then drive the interviews. And over a week, what I want you all to do is that, see, the classes are almost like the classes are done, right? Now once the classes are done, and once basically the student kind of loses the touch with the faculty, the practice will eventually keep going down. So the areas what I want you all to practice is the automation section of the things, because manual, really anyone can do it on manually, okay? But as a DevOps engineer, we'll need to basically see how to automate things out. So PowerShell, ARM, Terraform, and also the interviews. Like these are the things basically what we'll need to do, or what we'll need to basically do on a daily basis as such. So please, I'll also give you all assignments and what to do, and also tell you all that in the weekend, if you are doing a mock interview, what are the topics that I'll be focusing upon. Like let's say if the topic is storage accounts, web apps, and Azure DevOps, those are the questions that I'll be asking from. Those are the real time questions basically that I'll be asking from. If let's say there's a topic like automation, then please imagine that I'll be asking you all from ARM, PowerShell, Terraform, Azure DevOps again. So anything, like any interview that we drive, it will have Azure DevOps with it. Okay, it will have Azure DevOps with it. And for every weekend I need someone to volunteer for the interview. Like I basically will take the interview. Please forward me your resume so that I can have your resumes in hand before I take your interview out. And I'll basically drive the interview, because see, on a daily basis, right, I take a lot of interviews. Like even in the organization where I work, we do a lot of interviews, we do a lot of interview drives and etc. So I kind of know what are the interview questions basically that we ask, or what basically are the focus areas basically if I want to kind of select someone. So this is what I'll be doing. So we'll do it on kind of weekends, we'll do it regularly over the weekends, and we'll drive this out.
Okay. And I request, please provide the content at least Monday, so that we can prepare by Saturday along with our work, regular work.
Definitely I'll provide the content. Like if the interview, if the mock interview, let's say, is the next Saturday, I'll provide the content this Saturday, so that it'll be a 1 week gap, so that you can prepare all those topics out.
Sure. And also, like how the real time work will be there. Like for example, we put experience of 3 years. They may ask
Mhm.
how you are working. So those also, one day you can just guide us.
Definitely, meaning what all is your daily, day-to-day activities
Day-to-day
and etc.
task and what and all the challenges we face. That kind of questions will be there in general.
Sure, definitely. I'll definitely do that. And also, from I mean, like I'm already there in the institution right now. So if anyone wants to come down to meet me, I'll be available till the afternoon, starting this Monday. So y'all can come down and we can have an interaction on that. Okay.
Sure, but I stay in Bangalore,
Sure.
so
Okay. Okay. I mean, I'm just
I'll
telling for
ping.
people who can
Okay.
basically, come down. They can. That's an available option, is what I'm just telling. Okay. So I'll just stop the recording for one quick minute, and let's see. Pause.